Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to another Q&A on the brand new LSAT-Flex that will now be held in May and June in place of the March, April, and June in-person LSATs that have been canceled as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. We told all our users to register for the June 2020 LSAT if they wanted to have a chance to take the next LSAT-Flex, and lo and behold, that is exactly what happened, so hopefully you took heed of that advice. My name is Mehran, and I'm the founder and CEO of TestMax, the company behind LSATMax, which is the #1 rated and most downloaded LSAT prep app in the App Store. We have also been ranked the #1 LSAT prep course 3 years running, and that was before the transition to the digital LSAT and the COVID-19 pandemic. If you haven't downloaded it already, just search LSATMax in the App Store. It is free to download, comes with a ton of free content, including a simulated LSAT Flex exam. And you can also create an account from our website by going to LSATMax.com, which you'll see here. If you go to sign in, at the top there, you'll see create free account. And so, obviously, COVID-19 has impacted all aspects of life, including the LSAT. But looking at COVID-19 pandemic from a glass half full perspective, it hasn't been all bad news. Sure, everything's been canceled, and we've been under stay-at-home orders since mid-March, but at the same time, COVID-19 has given us Murakami BOGOs and LSAT Flex, which is not only a shorter LSAT, but also one that you get to take from the comfort of your own home. And that's a win-win in my book. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, LSAT Flex, everything related to it, answer all your questions, talk about how to best prepare. But before we get started on today's presentation, I did want to go over just a few housekeeping items before we get started. First, my colleague Claire is in the chat helping out. But if you want me to answer a question, please make sure you drop it in the Q&A. I have the Q&A open here. I'm watching it closely. I will integrate your questions into the presentation as I can, so that way we're not wasting time at the end of the presentation answering redundant questions. Second, for more on the LSAT Flex, including how to quickly improve on logic games and reading comp, since they're now more heavily weighted on the LSAT Flex, make sure you check out our podcast, The Legal Level, which is hosted by LSATMax instructors Yelena and Brandon. You can see it here. It's available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and wherever else you might listen to podcasts. So definitely take advantage of that. And then lastly here, I just wanted to announce we do have 2 additional webinars coming up here, and those will be held next week. So first we have how to study for the LSAT, which is going to be on May 12th at noon Pacific time. And then on Thursday, May 14th, we have financing law school. And again, that will be at noon Pacific time. So definitely make sure to register for those and come out to, get that useful information. And with that said, let's dive into the topic at hand, which is none other than LSAT Flex. We'll talk about a LSAT Flex simulator very shortly, but first, let's go over the basics. What is it? So LSAT Flex is a remotely proctored version of the LSAT that's been released in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, which resulted in the cancellation of the March in-person LSAT, the April in-person LSAT, and at least in terms of North America, the June in-person LSAT. And to be aware, in terms of internationally, the June LSAT is still scheduled to take place in person as of today. But in terms of North America, the June LSAT has been canceled and it has been transitioned to the LSAT Flex. And so you see here, obviously, the April exam was replaced by the May LSAT Flex, which is taking place here coming up. And then the June exam was replaced by the June LSAT Flex, which is also coming up here, June 14th, June 15th. Now, in terms of if you're wondering what happened to March, remember March was canceled and those registrations were automatically moved to April. And then when April was canceled is when they announced LSAT Flex. And here you go in terms of when it will be given. So in terms of the May LSAT Flex, again, it's primarily May 18th and May 19th. That registration has already opened. And so hopefully if you're taking that exam, you have already secured your slot. They will have some additional administrations later in the week for accommodation purposes. And in terms of the target release date for the scores, it's June 5th for the May LSAT Flex. In terms of the June LSAT Flex, again, that's going to be mostly held on June 14th and June 15th. Signups are going to open on May 13th, and you really want to make sure you're on the moment signups open so that you can select your preferred slot in terms of time and date. And then June 30th is the target score release date for that. All right, so moving on here. Who can take the LSAT Flex? So again, it is currently limited to North America. We have not seen LSAT Flex introduced internationally. And again, anyone who was registered for the April LSAT, which included all the people who were originally registered for March and had that exam canceled, are obviously allowed to take the May LSAT Flex. And again, you had to be registered for that exam as of April 7th, 2020. In terms of for the June LSAT, again, you had to have been registered for that as of April 29th. And if you were, you are automatically going to be registered to take the LSAT Flex. You can opt out, just like they gave you the option to opt out of the May LSAT Flex. And one of the questions we should get out of the way right now is, should you take LSAT Flex if you're eligible to take it? And the answer is absolutely. It's shorter, you're taking it from home, and I think those things by themselves are going to lead to the conclusion that we should definitely take advantage of this opportunity. Now, obviously, that assumes a few things that we're going to talk about in terms of equipment, having a quiet place and stable internet connection. But assuming that those things are present, it is something that you definitely want to take advantage of, right? All right, and so here is one of the questions that we received. How is the LSAT Flex shorter? Well, it's shorter because instead of being the 5 sections that we're used to, again, right, 4 scored sections, 1 experimental section. Of the 4 scored sections on a traditional LSAT, we have 2 logical reasoning section, 1 logic game section, 1 reading comp section. The LSAT Flex is going to be 3 sections, 1 of each. Logic games, logical reasoning, reading comp. No break, no experimental. It's going to be about 2 hours in length. And again, you will be taking it at home on a computer with remote proctoring. And so another question that we have here that we might as well get out of the way is, can you take the LSAT Flex on an iPad? And the answer is no. You need to take it on a computer. And if you notice with LSATMax, our LSAT Flex simulator is available on LSATMax Online. You can review your exams in the app, both on iOS and Android, but in terms of taking it, we have limited that functionality to LSATMax Online. And the reason for that is the experience you're going to have on exam day. So it's really important to take advantage of that. Now, obviously, it's going to be comprised of real LSAT questions. The big thing here, though, is that obviously with logical reasoning being only 1 section instead of 2, a lot of people were wondering, how will it be scored? Are we going to see double weight? Will we give every logical reasoning question double the weight? Because that's how a traditional LSAT is. And when we first released our LSAT Flex simulator before LSAC had made any announcements, we doubled the weight of logical reasoning. But that is not how LSAT Flex will be scored. It's going to have the same 120 to 180 scale, but it's going to be based on equal weight. Just like a regular LSAT, obviously equal weight in a regular LSAT world is 2 of 4 sections being logical reasoning. Here, we're seeing 1 of the 3 sections being logical reasoning, but still we're going to have equal weight. And LSATMax has updated every single LSAT Flex that we offer. And one of the questions that we see here is, how did we create our LSAT Flexes? Are they real LSATs? And the answer to that is absolutely. All we did was take the previous LSATs, and so I can pull it up here. And so you see we have all 90 LSATs, and all we did was eliminate 1 logical reasoning section. And so there are 3 section real LSATs. And then what we did is we adjusted the scaled score so that it would represent what you would expect on the actual LSAT-Flex. And so in terms of here, you see, again, we talked about standard scale 120 to 180, will not be doubling LR. Every question has equal weight. And you will have an annotation, though, on your score report that indicates that this was an LSAT-Flex exam. All right, so moving along. Will this be easier or harder? So again, according to LSAC, neither, right? They feel that this is going to be an identical experience, and obviously something that they're continuing to emphasize. But obviously, it's shorter, right? So from a stamina perspective, it's less grueling. 3 sections as opposed to 5. And so that can't be understated. Now, in terms of is it going to be substantively easier or harder, the questions are identical. And so really the only difference comes from this idea of having 1 logical reasoning section versus 2. And so if you're strong in logical reasoning, you could argue that the LSAT-Flex is going to be more challenging for you because now that section doesn't carry the weight that it did on a traditional LSAT. On the flip side of that coin, if you're strong in reading comp and logic games, you should feel that your score will be higher on the LSAT-Flex because those sections are more heavily weighted than they are on a traditional LSAT. And so we'll talk about, how to improve briefly here. But again, I do want to emphasize, that we do have a full podcast episode on that, which we will highlight here as we progress as well. And so obviously this is something else that students are really concerned about. Will admissions committees view LSAT-Flex the same as they view a regular LSAT? And according to LSAT, the answer is absolutely. And I would have to agree that that's going to be the case because you have to understand, why do we have LSAT-Flex? Why does it exist? It exists because of this pandemic. We had a situation where LSATs were being canceled, March, April, June. And we have students out there who are trying to apply to law school right now that without having an LSAT score, were unable to do that. So that's where LSAC stepped up and said, hey, we're going to do something dramatic, radical, but obviously in the best interest of our students who are trying to apply to law school now. So it wouldn't make any sense for law schools who are getting the benefit of students being able to take this LSAT-Flex and apply this cycle to fill their class to then turn around and hold it against that student, right? Now, obviously in terms of the top schools, right, this discussion is irrelevant. Like, for example, Harvard Law School's application deadline closed in February, well before any of this stuff had even started to take place. Now, how will that look in the fall, right? When it's not based on trying to fill this class during the pandemic, that's impossible to say. But again, LSAC is adamant that they will view this as the same. And, at this point, it is looking likely that we could even see another LSAT-Flex. And we are getting a ton of questions here about the July exam. Will it be canceled? Will it be replaced? They are going to be answered right now as we progress. So stay tuned for a second. But related to this, because this is actually a good question that came in from Victor, do we have a list of schools accepting LSAT-Flex? So from my understanding, if the school's application deadline has not passed and they are still accepting applications right now, they will accept LSAT-Flex. Now, obviously, that's something that you definitely want to confirm with the law schools, but according to LSAC, right, they are going to treat this exam just like they would treat a regular LSAT. And so a very similar question, will it be weighed differently when applying to schools, right? Again, according to LSAC, no. Again, I don't see that it would be the case right now, as it's a benefit to the law schools who are able to accept this score. Now, obviously, we don't know how that will unfold in the fall. We'll talk about the fall cycle because I do think a lot of things are lining up here to make this next application cycle more challenging. And so another reason that if you were applying to law schools this cycle, you're taking the May LSAT-Flex, you're taking the June LSAT-Flex, you're trying to apply now, it's probably a good idea, right? Because in the fall, I think for the next class, it will be more competitive. And obviously we'll talk about why very shortly. And so great transition into how I can take the next LSAT-Flex. And so something I want to highlight here is that, we talked about this at the beginning. We told all of our users that if they wanted to take the next LSAT-Flex exam, to register for the June LSAT-Flex. If you notice here, we said, for those of you kicking yourself for missing out on the opportunity to take the May LSAT-Flex, registering for the June 2020 LSAT is arguably the best way to have an opportunity to take the next LSAT-Flex, if there is one. And obviously that advice ended up being spot on. And so now let's talk about what's next. We know that the next LSAT on the books is the July 2020 LSAT. And so, just like we told you for the June LSAT, if you want to have a chance to take the next LSAT Flex, we would highly recommend registering for the July LSAT, because obviously that is the most likely LSAT to be converted over to this new format, right? And you see there the registration deadline for the July 2020 LSAT is Thursday, May 28th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. Now, obviously, if you're an LSATMax user, free or paid, we will keep you guys informed. We will send reminders, right? But obviously, please make sure that you're staying subscribed via email, via text, so that when we get these notices, we can get them out to you. You guys can take advantage of this advice, because obviously, as we always say, we serve at your pleasure. But we cannot serve if we can't communicate. All right, so now we talked about that. So what are the chances, July being, actually, you know what? Before we do that, I just want to pull up, because it's probably a good time to talk about it. And obviously we are seeing some additional questions here. So if you look here we go. So will you be giving additional LSAT Flex test administrations in July if the COVID-19 emergency is still affecting large parts of the country? And you notice, if necessary, yes. We are monitoring the COVID-19 situation very closely and will follow the direction of public health authorities in determining whether the July LSAT must be canceled in some or all locations. We are making contingency plans so that no matter what the COVID-19 situation is in July, candidates will have the opportunity to test. If necessary, another remotely proctored LSAT Flex could be part of the solution. Now, obviously, we're starting to see things open up, right? But I wouldn't use that to dissuade you from still registering for the July LSAT, because think about this scenario, which is very likely. It starts to open up. We see a spike in cases. Stay-at-home orders return. And so, again, if you want to have a chance to take the next LSAT Flex, take a gamble, register for the July 2020 LSAT. Remember, worst case scenario, you can always change your exam date, move it to a different time. If it doesn't become an LSAT Flex and you want to give yourself more time to prepare, but that would be my recommendation for everybody asking about how you can have a chance to take the next LSAT Flex. So I'm going to close these out of the Q&A. Again, so we're seeing a lot of questions about should you take the LSAT Flex. Again, as we're emphasizing here, if you are registered for May, take it. If you're registered for June, take it. If you have been preparing and you feel like you have a chance to achieve your target score on July, I would absolutely take July as well. I don't think I would, sign up for July, not prepare and take it just because it's an LSAT Flex. That doesn't make any sense, right? But if you have been preparing, I would not be afraid of it. All right, so one question that I saw here that I did want to chat about is what time signups open for the June LSAT Flex. So we're talking about this page here, where the time slot signups begin on May 13th. If it's what it was like for the May LSAT, that was at noon Eastern time, so 9 a.m. Pacific time. But obviously, stay tuned for LSAC announcements on that. And the May one was postponed a couple of times because of some technical issues on ProctorU's end, which is actually a nice transition to how it will be proctored. So this exam is going to be proctored remotely from a company called ProctorU, which is actually who LSAC uses to proctor the writing sample, which since the LSAT transitioned to a digital LSAT on a tablet back in July 2019, July 2019, the writing sample has been administered remotely, proctored using ProctorU. So ProctorU is not new. It's new from the perspective of now, instead of just being the writing sample, it is going to proctor the entire exam. And so here you see the system requirements. We will share this PDF presentation notes with you guys. So there's no reason to go over all of this stuff in super detail, but I do think there's a couple of things that are really important. Obviously, you're going to need a webcam. You're going to need a PC. You're going to need a Mac running Windows or Mac OS. So something to keep in mind, Google Chromebooks won't work. Tablets, as we've already discussed, won't work. I know a lot of students, went out and bought Microsoft Surface Pro tablets to simulate the digital LSAT experience, which we don't recommend, even if you aren't taking the LSAT-Flex, right? If you're taking the digital LSAT, just use an iPad or an Android tablet. All that matters is that the tablet size is similar to the size of the screen you're going to encounter in a normal iPad, a normal Android tablet. Are very, very similar. And more importantly, our app actually gives you the ability to simulate the digital LSAT, whereas we don't have an app for Microsoft Surface Pro tablets because nobody has that tablet. And obviously you see some other things here in terms of compatible browser. Chrome is preferred, just like with LSATMax, right? If you're using LSATMax, that's the web browser that we recommend as well, but you can also use Mozilla Firefox. But note, Safari is not an option, okay? And so, one of the things to chat about, which is actually coming up here, that we might want to jump ahead and then come back, because what if you don't have the equipment? Right? What if you don't have a web camera? What if you don't have a Mac or a PC, or even a stable internet connection? And so, as you see here, contact LSAC, right? If you're in that situation, LSAC has announced that it's going to work with candidates who do not have the appropriate equipment or a place to take the test, right? Because the other thing to keep in mind is we're stuck on stay-at-home orders. Finding a quiet place to take the exam can be challenging, and you're going to see some of the stuff that we talk about in terms of security and people entering the room and what happens if that takes place. So please reach out to LSAC if you're in this situation, right? Obviously, the last thing LSAC wants to do here is eliminate students from the testing pool, right? That's not the idea of LSAT-Flex. The whole idea of LSAT-Flex is to allow you to take the exam. Now, obviously, these situations are requiring that, instead of them providing tablets at a location, they have to come up with other ways to accommodate, but they're obviously willing to do that. So please take advantage of that. You can email them, you can call them. And notice, if you're taking the June LSAT-Flex, make a note of your situation in response to the LSAT-Flex option form in your LSAC account no later than 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on Monday, May 18th. So 2 weeks from yesterday. All right, so let's jump back here. All right, so we did system requirements. Let's see. Talk about the time up slots. Again, that was noon Eastern Time for the May LSAT, but stay tuned. You just log into ProctorU's website and select the time. So in terms of, here's a question about the special equipment. So, I think this is a great page for that in terms of what you need to be able to run it. And I think you can actually go to ProctorU's website and do a test to confirm that your system requirements are present. Maybe Claire can confirm that in the chat, but I would assume that they have that feature. I know that, ExamSoft, for example, for the bar exam, allows you to do that. All right. And so, yeah, so one of the questions here, if you were signed up for the June LSAT, you are automatically signed up for the LSAT-Flex. And if you want to see that here, so if you see right in the middle of the screen here, anyone who was registered for the June 8th, 2020 LSAT will automatically be registered for the June LSAT-Flex, unless you opt out. So again, you will have the option to opt out, but do not do that. All right, so let's continue on here. Making some good progress. Oops, that's not it. All right, so what do I need to do for the exam, and what am I allowed to have? All right, so here's obviously one of the main questions that we've been receiving about scratch paper. And you will be able to have scratch paper. You can have 5 blank sheets of scratch paper. And before you freak out and think, oh my God, it's only 5 pages. Remember, it's only 3 sections, right? So it's instead of 5 sections, it's only 3. So with that being said, hopefully you don't need more than 5 pages of scratch paper. You can obviously have pencils, highlighters, erasers, but no mechanical erasers or erasers with sleeves. Pencil sharpener you can have, tissues, a beverage in a plastic container or juice box, max size present there, no aluminum cans. And back to our good friend, the analog wristwatch, right? So you can't have a digital timer, but you can have an analog timer. And for any of you out there who are looking for an analog timer, I am thrilled to report that decision by LSAC is bringing our analog timer back from the dead. And so if you want an LSAT timer, 35 minutes, the bezel rotates, so it's really easy to keep time in between sections. You can purchase this for $22.99 here on our website. We will include this link. And then you notice here, obviously, all items must be shown to the proctor during the security check in procedure, including both sides of the scratch paper. So you're going to actually have to pick up a piece of paper, hold it in front of the camera, show both sides, right? It's a brave new world. It's a brave new world. But hey, at least we're using it for productive things like helping you take an exam remotely, right? All right, so continuing on here, what can't you have during the test, right? Obviously, you can't have hats, hoods, right? Unless it's religious, sunglasses, headphones, earplugs, earbuds, right? Unless an accommodation has been made. Briefcases, handbags, backpacks, books, printed materials, or notes. Items not allowed in the room during testing. Room scan, right? Cell phones. You're allowed to have a cell phone to use as the mirror during check-in as instructed by your proctor, but it must be turned off and put away before the exam begins. You cannot have any other electronic devices, right? Digital watches, timers we talked about, and obviously e-cigarettes, which I know it's stressful, guys, but hopefully we can make it through 3 LSAT sections without needing to light up. And I think this is a good transition to one of our most common questions for this one. Can you read aloud? And I see that William just dropped it in the chat, and we did see a bunch of this in the Q&A as well. You cannot read questions aloud. And obviously the reason for that is, they're heavily going to rely on artificial intelligence here to proctor, right? This idea that a person is going to sit there and watch every single person take every 3 sections is not going to happen, right? They're going to have people checking in randomly, right? They're obviously going to have a live person check you in. But then I think during your exam, it's going to be random live check-ins. But the most important security feature that they're going to use is the artificial intelligence. And part of that artificial intelligence is going to be noises. And so if somebody's speaking during the exam, it's going to flag, which is probably why they are preventing you from reading the questions aloud. Now, you notice you can't communicate with anybody else. First of all, you shouldn't have anybody else in the room, right? It's actually prohibited. If somebody walks in the room, you got to instruct them to leave immediately. It's going to flag your exam as well, but they'll be able to watch it and see what took place. You obviously have to keep your face in the view of the webcam during the entire exam. You can't leave your seats, no breaks. You can't run any prohibitive software applications. You can't access any prohibitive materials. And obviously connecting or disconnecting any external storage devices. Again, not sure why you would be doing any of these things other than maybe wanting to read the questions aloud, but you can't do that. And so remember, LSAT-Flex is a remarkable opportunity, not a remarkable opportunity to ruin your future by having a note on your account that you cheated during LSAT-Flex. I assure you that no matter how smart you think you are, you will not be able to game the ProctorU security. And more importantly, because the LSAT is testing a way of thinking and not a subject-based exam, how are you going to cheat on it anyway? Even if you had like your sufficient and necessary keyword indicators, if you're referring to things, first of all, if your eyes are constantly moving off the screen, that's going to flag it. And if you're referring to things, you're not moving at the pace that you're going to need, it's not going to matter anyway, right? So again, Let's be ethical here. We are, do not try to emulate Saul Goodman. Let's go on and be ethical attorneys and hopefully be positive contributing members to society. All right, what if I have approved accommodation? So we talked a little bit about the idea that, we will see some additional exams being held throughout the week, other than the 2 main days that they've announced because of accommodations. And if you have accommodations, you will still receive those accommodations for LSAT-Flex. And LSAC will obviously communicate directly with you regarding your accommodations, whatever they might be, and you will have those on the exam. So, something that we talked about as I was obviously talking about the proctoring and, having to show your paper and stuff, but how will they prevent cheating? And so here you have it. All of you are going to be monitored via live remote proctor using the web camera and the microphone. So we're going to have video and audio, and it's going to be recorded, right? And if any of you guys have ever taken a baseline score with LSATMax, we actually do the exact same thing. We monitor your exam remotely using technology. And so I think that this system is definitely going to work. And so, obviously they point this out, which I'm not sure why you would assume that they would, but, because of, the privacy and security stuff that we're seeing, even with Zoom, to be quite frank, obviously they do emphasize here, just for your own peace of mind, that ProctorU will not be able to access any other files on your computer without your knowledge, which is always nice to know. All right, so, and we talked about this again, please guys, do not let a lack of equipment be the reason you don't try to take LSAT-Flex. LSAC is extending a hand here. We don't know what that hand looks like, but I would highly recommend taking advantage of it if you can. All right, moving on. Give me 1 second. 1 second, 1 second. Sorry guys, I just want to turn this notification off. I have do not disturb on, but for some reason this one keeps coming through. And so that should solve it. Let's dive right back in. All right. So moving on to how you can best prepare for the new LSAT-Flex. So just like when the LSAT was a paper pencil exam, just like when it transitioned to a digital LSAT administered on a tablet, you want to mimic exam conditions as closely as possible on all of your practice exams. And obviously we are super proud to have been the first company to release an LSAT-Flex simulator for every single exam that has been released. And you see here in this picture, when you go into LSATMax, underneath Take Full Exam, you see the option Take LSAT-Flex Exam. And our scoring system has been updated, and something that I might do here, just so you guys can see that. Let's transition from sharing that screen to sharing this screen. All right, so this is LSATMax Online. If I come to the filter, sorry, actually, before I do that, the free LSAT, the June 2007 LSAT, you see also has an LSAT-Flex option here, so you can take that. But then in addition to all the free exam, we have all of the additional ones. And if you just want to go down here, I have unlocked one of these older ones for myself. You see here, I did take this LSAT-Flex. And you notice that my scaled score is based off of 75, 76 questions, but converting it to 120 to 180. So just like the LSAT-Flex is going to be equally weighted, that is how our scoring system is working now. So these are going to be great ways to get a sense of how you are doing on LSAT-Flex. So definitely take advantage of that. And something just to emphasize real quick, as I go here, oh, I can't do that actually, never mind. I'll do it from my iPad in a second. I just wanted to make sure you guys are aware that you don't need to be an LSATMax student to take advantage of our LSAT simulator. Both for the digital LSATs on the tablet and LSAT-Flex, right? So you see here, you can purchase these a la carte from our website, and obviously we'll share the link for this as well when we share the replay. And so obviously that's the first and most important thing. Now, one of the things that we talk about a lot is, you don't want to take too many full-length simulated LSATs leading up to your practice, your real exam, because you don't want to burn yourself out. Obviously, being a 3-section exam is less fatiguing than the 5 sections. So, if you want to take 2 simulated LSAT flexes, that should be okay. Just space them out during the week. Obviously, the May LSAT is coming up, right? It's less than 2 weeks away now. But if you want to take 4 simulated LSAT flexes between now and then, that's great. Obviously, you can continue to do individual sections to work on 35 minutes under time pressure without experiencing that mental fatigue. Obviously, that's one of the things that we're really going to talk about next week, and how to study for the LSAT. Not only how to start to prepare initially, but also how to deal with timing and timed practice once you get to that part of your prep. In terms of substantively how to prepare for LSAT Flex, I would refer you guys to the latest full episode of the Legal Level podcast. They did release a bonus episode over the weekend, but before that, you'll see episode 5, which is improving logic games and reading comp scores before LSAT Flex. Obviously, the idea here being those sections now are more heavily weighted, and so if we can get those to move, we should see our LSAT Flex score move. And so you see here, if you're strong in logical reasoning and panicking about Flex, this is the episode for you. You're going to learn how to stop missing main point questions, plan what you can accomplish in 35 minutes, not what you wish you could accomplish, how to use scenarios to improve your timing on logic games, the importance of relying on previous work, obviously, particularly just like with the digital LSAT, now with LSAT Flex and our work having to be on a blank piece of scratch paper, the importance of being organized, nice, neat, so we can rely on previous work. And then how to apply logical reasoning skills to reading comp, right? Because if you are strong on logical reasoning, right, there's no reason that we can't replicate that in reading comprehension, right? Most reading comprehension questions are must-be-true questions, right? Obviously, the difference being that you have a much larger, quote-unquote, stimulus, right? But, they do talk about that. They talk about how to make comparative passages or comparative reading simple. And then lastly, how to take care of your mental health down the stretch here. All right. So don't forget to check that out. And then obviously here we talk a little bit about our courses, right? For those of you who aren't aware, we are a comprehensive LSAT prep course. In terms of the difference between pro, premium, and intensive, it's important to remember that the course is the same. All of the content in terms of the lessons, the homework assignments, the practice exams, identical. Weekly office hours, identical. And the office hours are really like this. And when it says weekly, it's actually much more than weekly. Since we announced office hours in November of 2019, it's actually worked out to, we host office hours 2 of every 3 days, which has been quite remarkable. During the entire stay-at-home pandemic, we've been hosting office hours every day for our students. We have another session later today with Ravi, who scored a 180. He will be doing an office hours on logic games, and that is free for all of our students. And then, so in terms of the difference between these packages, it's really the number of additional LSATs. So you notice with Pro, you get 20 prep tests. With Premium, you get all 90, right? So that's the difference between Pro and Premium. And then the difference between Premium and Intensive is that Intensive just adds 3 hours of private one-on-one tutoring to that package. And again, the private one-on-one tutoring is very similar to this experience, except obviously one-on-one, but still coronavirus-free private tutoring. So you can take advantage of that even during stay-at-home orders. And so, do I have enough time to improve my LSAT score before LSAT Flex? Obviously, we talked about the May LSAT being less than 2 weeks away. The June LSAT is just over a month away now. And you see here a testimonial from one of our students, Melody Vidmar, right, who came to us with 2 weeks left struggling on logic games, right? And she took advantage of our monthly subscription, which for those of you, preparing for May and June, the lifetime access packages, while great, probably don't make a whole lot of sense for you unless you're certain you're going to take it again. We would probably recommend you to our pay-as-you-go monthly subscription. which is what Melody took advantage of, right? She had 2 weeks remaining. She took advantage of our monthly subscription. She was missing 12, 13 points on logic games, and on her actual LSAT, she only missed 1. Think about that kind of an improvement on LSAT-Flex, where logic games is even more heavily weighted, what that could do for your LSAT score, and obviously what that would do for your chances of gaining admission and improve your chances of admission, obviously with the LSAT being the #1 factor in law school admissions. And so just to emphasize that, we will include this in the replay as well, but this is the monthly subscription. It's a pay-as-you-go, $199 a month, cancel at any time, and what that does is it unlocks LSATMax Pro on a pay-as-you-go basis. So don't feel that, I would love to take advantage of LSATMax. It just doesn't make sense with such a short window. You can take advantage of all of our resources on a pay-as-you-go basis. And remember, that does unlock office hours. So you can take advantage of all the office hours, including, for example, if you're enrolled right now, you could join today's. And remember, the office hour session is available for replay. So you don't even need to be present for them. So if you look here, I'll go to office hours here, and you notice all of these office hours sessions, right? You see the 100th episode there, diagnostic review with Ben. And, if you come in as a free student, I can turn on this filter so you can see this is what it looks like as a free student. And all of these webinars are free at the top here. And so this is all content that you can take advantage of as well. So please, guys, definitely take advantage of all that stuff. Oh, another thing I do want to emphasize is, obviously this is a lot of content, right? If you're looking for help with a specific thing, navigating this ocean of, ever updating content can be challenging. And that's why we have the filter, right? And that filter will allow you to focus in on things that are giving you trouble, right? So let's say you're struggling with, LSAT errors in reasoning, right? You notice here, by applying that, I'm able to see just the sessions that are related to errors in reasoning. And obviously, we will continue to host office hour sessions, all hosted by our 99th percentile LSAT instructors. So definitely take advantage of that if you're not already. And then, obviously, those same instructors that host office hours that are available to you guys on the message boards are available for private one-on-one tutoring. We have it hourly. We have it in terms of packages. So you are able to take advantage of that. They are hosted through Zoom, just like this, and we are able to share our screen and work things out visually, if you want to see what I'm talking about, because obviously, you see logic games is a very visual thing here. And so, being able to work through a game with you and say, okay, we have, 5 people in a parade or whatever the case might be able to show you that, whether it's logic games, whether it's sufficient and necessary, right? Being able to diagram and write the contrapositives, right? As Yelena says, flip it and reverse it, right? Like Mr. Elliott. And so, this is available, and obviously being on demand, being remote, you're able to do it from the comfort of your own home during stay-at-home orders. And so while COVID-19 is disrupting everything, it's not disrupting your ability to prepare for the most important exam of your life. And as we always say, imagine walking out of the quarantine period with your target LSAT score in hand. How exciting that would be. All right. And then here we just have some additional testimonials that I will leave up for a second as I turn my attention to Q&A. So I'm just going to go through what we have so far, dismiss questions that we've already answered, and we'll go from there. All right, so first question here. Do I have to have a paid LSATMax account to take the practice test? No, absolutely not. So if you just want to take advantage of LSAT-Flex simulation or digital practice LSAT simulation, you don't want to use our course or our other materials, you're able to do that. The way you want to do that is you would just create a free account, right? So download the app, go to the website, create a free account. And I can show you here, you go to sign in, right? Sign up for free. You can create your free account. When you enter, this is not what it looks like as a free student. As a free student, it's going to be colored icons through timing, right? Because everything through timing is unlocked, including the free LSAT. And then if you go on our site and purchase a bundle of digital LSATs, you will be able to access those from the course without buying the full course. And so you would just go back. So let's say you bought prep tests 80 through 89, you would purchase that, you would go back, and 89 through 80 would be unlocked and you'll be able to access them. And so yes, you are able to do that. And then, you do also have the ability, if you don't want to buy a bundle, in the app, you can actually buy them a la carte, like one exam, right? And you see that here. And so you can do that as well. All right, so moving along. What if you have a pet that enters and exits the screen? So if you have a pet that enters and exits the screen, you have nothing to worry about. There was actually a question here that I saw. Here we go. Well, we should talk about both. If someone else enters the room, we talked about that, but here you see exactly what LSAC says about that. So it says if someone else enters the room, you must ask them to leave immediately. At the proctor's discretion, you may continue testing once the person leaves the room. Your testing session will be flagged for further review. You will not be penalized if the interaction is brief and it is evident that no information about the test was communicated. Now, obviously, let's just try to avoid having people walking on your exam. Let's inform our roommates. Let's inform our family, right? Hey, I'm taking the LSAT-Flex for the next 2 hours. Please do not come into this room. I mean, you can literally, write a nice big sign, do not enter, right? Beware of dog on the door to, try to, make sure that the people who are obviously going to be stuck at home with stay-at-home orders can give you the space you need. In terms of a pet, there's nothing to worry about. What it says here is, if a pet wanders into the room while you are testing, you may continue testing. Your face must be clearly visible throughout the test, and once you begin, you cannot move out of the view of the webcam until it is over, right? So if a pet comes in, the last thing you want to do is get up and move off of the webcam and go get the pet to try to get him out of the room. Ignore it, leave it, focus on the exam. All right. Here's a great question from Haley. You mentioned law school admissions being more competitive in the fall. Can I speak more to that? Absolutely. So, in response to COVID-19, I think you're going to see a couple of things happening. I think you're seeing a lot of people who were planning to apply in the spring right now putting it off. Obviously, they're dealing with other things, and LSAT is not really a priority. And then applying to law schools this late, they're going to decide, you know what, I'm just going to hold it and do it for the next cycle. That's one. The second thing is we are probably heading into a recession, right? The impact on the economy of this cannot be understated. And generally speaking, when you see a recession, students tend to go back to graduate school, obviously law school being one of those, because if there's fewer jobs, students don't have the option of, going and pursuing careers as opposed to, pursuing higher education. And so you tend to see them go towards the higher education degrees during recessions. And so something to be aware of, that I would anticipate that the application numbers just based on that will increase in the fall. And then the last thing is you have students who were accepted and are afraid of starting law school in the fall because of the uncertainty surrounding coronavirus, right? Are campuses going to be open? You do see some students who are saying, you know what, I'm going to defer that. And obviously, if they're deferring it, they're taking up a seat for the next class, which will make that more competitive. So here's a question from Lucio. How do you get to the office hours again? So I'll show it from both the app and the online version. So from the app, all you do is you tap the left menu, the 3 lines in the top left-hand corner, and you navigate to office hours. Now, in terms of from the computer, you see here on the left menu, under message boards, you see this clock icon. If you click that, you will see the office hours. Okay. And so that is how you access office hours portal. Okay, now continuing on here. Okay, So will we be allowed to use the Control F, Command F function to search keywords or phrases during the reading comp on the LSAT-Flex? I would assume absolutely not, right? That is not representative of how the LSAT functions. So I doubt they will give you that ability. But remember, you can, they say that if you go on, let me go back to that page in our presentation, you can get a sense of what LSAT-Flex is going to look and feel like from their perspective by checking out the free LSATs that are offered on LSAC, by LSAC on Law Hub. All right. Do you know if you can use a pen? So it says number 2 pencil. We talked about that. So number 2 pencil and highlighters are allowed. Again, coming back to our page here. With the LSAT-Flex, how many questions are needed to raise your scores? It's still 2 questions per point. So, you know, the idea here is it's about 3/4 of a regular scale, right? So 75% of a regular scale, because it's 75 questions versus 100 questions, right? So if you generally see 2 points, right, 75% of that would then be required on LSAT-Flex. But again, you know, remember, it varies based on where you are in the scale, right? Generally at the top, it's 1 point, right, per question. In the 170s, obviously, as you go down the scale, you can miss more questions and not move. But what we've done is we've taken the existing scales for every LSAT and updated them to account for equal weight on 75, 76 questions. Okay, here's a good question from Ava. On LSAC's website, they say that our eyes cannot leave the computer screen while taking LSAT-Flex. How will they account for folks taking notes? Well, so look, I think this is a great example. Like, so let's imagine you guys were proctoring me taking LSAT-Flex. And here's my web camera, right? I've shown you guys my scratch papers, right? And now I want you to compare the difference between me looking down and writing, right? Like this, right? And me doing something like this. Right? I think what they're trying to convey to you is if they notice your eyes moving off of the screen into locations that are not natural, you're going to flag their AI. I think it's natural to look down and write on scratch paper. It's not natural to be looking into the corner, right? The idea of, you know, you had something on your wall, right? I think that's what they're talking about. So I wouldn't worry about obviously using scratch paper. You're going to need to, right? How are you going to do logic games without scratch paper? All right. So Zena, will you be able to use the mouse? Yes, I would imagine you're going to use the mouse on LSAT-Flex, right, to select answer choices. We had a question about the touch, which I'm not sure about. Probably a good question for LSAC. Was the idea is if your computer has touch technology, can you touch answer choices instead of clicking with the mouse? I would assume since touch replaces the mouse, yes, but that's a question for LSAC. If you're planning to take the July LSAT, should I practice both LSAT-Flex and regular? Yeah, I think that's a good idea, right? And I think a nice way to do that in a balanced way is, you know, obviously you have the full-length 5-section LSATs that you're taking probably once a week, right? And then maybe during the week, we're going to do an LSAT-Flex. It's only 3 sections, right? Not as grueling, but I would definitely prepare for both. And, you know, if I was a betting man, I would bet that July is going to be LSAT-Flex. I think, you know, I understand that we're seeing things open up. You know, my gut tells me you're going to see, it, you know, cases spike, and then we're going to go back to stay-at-home orders. You know, I feel a lot better about August, definitely October, right? In terms of, you know, in-person digital LSATs on tablets. I would assume July would be LSAT-Flex. Again, I could be wrong, but of all the exams coming up, it's the most likely one to be converted to an LSAT-Flex. I think if you look at August, you look at October, the farther we get from this, I know people are talking about how this is going to come back in the fall. You know, again, who knows? And I think as you think long-term, I think LSAT-Flex will probably be the norm, right? I think it's probably something LSAC was considering. Their hand was forced, but I would assume that if this experience goes well, it is, a similar experience, scores are comparable, being able to take exams remotely from home, there's a lot of benefits to that logistically. Technology has a remarkable ability to scale things. And so, that's how I'm thinking about it right now. And so just remember, again, in terms of that, the deadline to register is May 28th. Now remember, if the July LSAT doesn't become an LSAT Flex and you don't want to take it, you can always just pay the change fee and change your exam date, right? So you're literally gambling with, I think the change date fee is $100. So if you're feeling lucky, put $100 on black. Hopefully it comes up LSAT Flex. Okay, we talked about that. Zena, will each section be immediately changed to the next? I would assume so, right? That's how it works on the digital LSAT. I mean, there's no reason for the section not to automatically change. I don't think it will automatically start. I don't know how the proctoring's working. Again, I would refer you to maybe LSAC Hub. In our system, right, when it ends, it moves to the next section. Generally they prompt you with the instructions. Someone's not reading it to you anymore, like the paper pencil exam. So it's possible that it's just going to be just like that, bang, bang. And that's how I would practice, right? If they do give you a moment, great, you get an extra moment to pause. But in terms of being accustomed to bang, 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 I would assume that as soon as the 35-minute section ends, it moves forward. And then this question, will you be able to hear anyone else besides the proctor? I'm assuming the answer is no, right? And I don't think you're going to be hearing the proctor during your exam. I would imagine, just like I can mute myself on my end right now, they could do that on LSAT Flex, right? Mute their side of the system to prevent you from being distracted. And I would assume they're going to do that. Jessica's question here, I'm not sure I'm understanding it, is, will the take-home writing test be counted? So remember, the writing sample has never been part of your scaled score. So that's not changing. It's still not part of your scaled score. Now, obviously, we know that they send it to every school that you apply to. Our recommendation is not to worry about it. Pick a side, do the 5-paragraph argument, your intro, 3 bodies, conclusion, form complete sentences. But outside of that, I would not waste my time worrying about the writing sample. Remember, the writing sample, you can take it anytime. I appreciate it, Ahmed. It's actually my dad's name. Hey, great name. All right, so should we take practice tests with only 3 sections? Well, so if you're taking the LSAT Flex, you should absolutely replicate that experience by taking 3-section LSATs, 3-section LSATs that are one of each section. Absolutely. And again, remember, all 90 exams in LSATMax, and again, just to emphasize this one more time, all 90. So, there's nobody who can say, man, I wish there was more LSAT Flexes for me to be able to practice on. We couldn't come up with any more. I mean, we literally did it for all 90 exams. So if you come here, go to prep tests, notice the new exam here, right under take full exam, you see take LSAT Flex exam. And this is the case for every single LSAT in LSATMax. Again, online. We don't have this feature in the app. You can review your LSAT Flexes in the app, but you can't take them in the app. And the reason we're not doing that is we want you to take it from your computer, because you want to replicate exam conditions, and that's how you're going to take the LSAT Flex. All right, continuing on here. So equal weight for each question. So Terry's question here is a great one. Equal weight for each section or for each question. So I know a lot of people say 33%. I think even Yelena and Brandon say each section will be 33%. Not technically true, right? Because generally logic games has fewer questions, right? 22 to 24. Reading comp has more questions, right? 25 to 28. Logical reasoning, we generally see recently 25, 26, even though in the past we've seen 24. And so we can't say because we don't know, but if it's like traditional LSATs, it's not technically equal weight per section, although it is equal weight per question. And they've said equal weight per question. And so we're operating under the assumption that, they're not going to make logic game sections longer, right? Now, every logic game section has to be 25 questions, right? And then they're not going to make every reading comp section shorter by making it have to be 25 questions. So I think it's going to be the same kind of logic games, fewer, reading comp most, logical reasoning in the middle in terms of number of questions per section. So how will the LSAT-Flex interface differ from LSATMax's prep interface? So we don't know, right? We have no sense because we haven't seen it. Obviously, they say, what it looks like on LSAC Hub. I can show you what it looks like with LSATMax. If you give me 1 second here. So let's go to the free exam and just launch it. So here you see it, right? You have the timer in the top right, right? The questions across the bottom, very similar to the digital LSAT. The ability to eliminate answer choices, right? Oops, I actually answered that one, but you can eliminate answer choices. You can bring them back, right? You can change the font spacing. Obviously, we'll know when we see a real LSAT-Flex, but I would imagine it'll be very similar, right? Now, again, something to keep in mind, though, they do tell you to bring an analog watch. Does that mean it won't have a timer? I would assume it's going to have a timer, but you might want to have an analog watch just in case. Now, again, for those of you who are worried about where you're going to find an analog watch, where am I going? Again, just pointing out that you can buy our watch for $22.99, $22.99. Shipping, domestic shipping is included, and we are still open, so we are able to get these out if you wanted to order it for the May exam. And then obviously the discount that we mentioned will apply to this watch as well. Oh, actually, would help to be showing the right screen. This is what I was talking about. All right, moving along. Will the annotation of the LSAT-Flex on our score negatively affect us? So, as we talked about in the presentation, LSAC is adamant that will not be the case. I would agree with them. And so I would not worry about that. I would do my best, and let's see what happens. Again, scratch paper will be allowed. So we have a question about the scratch paper. Again, 5 pieces. You will have to show it to the proctor beforehand. Again, very similar question here. Are schools accepting the LSAT-Flex the same way they would a regular LSAT? Yes. For schools that still have application cycles open this cycle, they are accepting LSAT-Flex. And obviously in the fall, schools are, according to LSAT, going to be considering LSAT-Flex scores as well. Now, we can't say because we don't know, but you would assume that LSAC wouldn't be doing all of this and then have it not help, right? If it doesn't allow you to apply to schools and get accepted, what is the whole purpose of doing LSAT-Flex? Here's an interesting question from, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, Shedrick. If someone signed up for the May LSAT-Flex and does not feel quite ready, do you think it's better to cancel and sign up for the June? Well, unfortunately, you can't sign up for the June LSAT. So, you could gamble, right, and sign up for July and hope that becomes an LSAT-Flex, but there's no guarantee that will be the case. So it's possible that if you cancel your May LSAT-Flex, you don't get another option or opportunity to take it. But obviously, if you're not going to be anywhere near the score you need, I could see not bothering. So here's a question that's interesting. Should I take the July LSAT-Flex for practice? So again, we don't know if July is going to be an LSAT-Flex, right? We are predicting, right, based on obviously what happened with June. We do see LSAC's comment here about, future administrations, both in terms of July and beyond that. So there's no way to know for sure. Now, again, as I mentioned earlier, I wouldn't just enroll in the July LSAT because you're thinking to yourself, hey, it's an LSAT-Flex. I don't need to study. I'm just going to take it. It's going to go great. It's only 3 sections. Anybody who's been studying for the LSAT knows that 3 sections, 4 sections, 5 sections, it's a beast of an exam. So what I would say about July is if you have been preparing and you're within the range of your target score, or you think that by the time July comes, you will have the ability to be within the range of your target score, I would absolutely consider registering for the July LSAT and gambling that $100 change date fee that it will become an LSAT-Flex exam. So here's a question from Diamond in terms of, can you explain why it would be better to be stronger at reading comp and games? So again, I'm only talking about in the world of LSAT-Flex, right? And maybe I'll draw this up for you guys just so you can see it. So this is the way a typical LSAT looks, right? We have LR1, LR2, logic games, reading comp, right? Coming out to about 100 or 101 questions. It's basically 25 or 26, 25 or 26, 22 to 24, and then 25 to 28. And so the idea here is, you notice you're basically 50% of a traditional LSAT is logical reasoning. Now compare that to LSAT-Flex, which is only going to be one logical reasoning section, one logic game section, one reading comp section. So again, same kind of assumption that we're going to make here. So again, equal weight per question, not per section necessarily, right? But you notice in this world, if we have 75, 76 questions, this is only 33%. And if you look, this is about 25, right? Again, estimating. Whereas over here, we're getting to 33. So you notice these are more heavily weighted on LSAT-Flex. So that's what we're talking about when we say how to quickly improve your score for LSAT-Flex is, if we can get logic games and reading comp to move, great. They're worth more. And again, just coming back to this podcast, I want to say it's almost an hour long. So please, if you haven't had a chance to listen to this episode and you're taking LSAT-Flex, it's great content and it's free, right? This is part of our free content. So please take advantage of it and put yourself in a position to maximize your score. So Sydney, if I'm applying to law school in 2021, will they accept LSAT-Flex as of now? That is what they're saying. Maggie Shirley, do you need a front-facing camera on your computer? No, you don't need it to be in your computer. A web camera is fine, right? So you could go buy a webcam, plug it into a computer, and that works. It doesn't have to be integrated into your hardware. And so that's obviously makes it a lot easier. If it was computers that have webcams embedded, I mean, that's not a whole lot of them. And so, yeah, any webcam, well, not any webcam. Let's go to the equipments page here. Here you go. The minimum resolution on the webcam, 640 by 480, but the recommended being 1280 by 720. Here's a question that I do not know the answer to, and I apologize. I tested my equipment and my speaker didn't pass, but it says it is okay. I would recommend reaching out to ProctorU. I'm sure they have technical support. I would recommend doing that immediately because I'm sure they're dealing with a lot of tickets, and obviously you definitely want to get that resolved well before your exam date, whether that's May or June, because you don't want that stuff to be the reason that you don't perform at your optimum, or actually be able to take the LSAT-Flex. Forget about performing at your optimum. Can you use a touch screen computer, not a tablet, for the LSAT-Flex? So I'm assuming that touchscreen computer meets these requirements. I'm assuming the answer is yes. Now, will they allow the touch to work instead of the mouse? I would assume so, but that's probably a question for ProctorU, or if Claire, who knows a lot more than I do, might be able to drop that in there. I don't know the answer to that. I apologize. Okay. So here's a great question from Emma. Do you have any tips, lessons on interacting with the text on a laptop as opposed to a tablet? So again, it's very similar. We know you have the highlighting, we know you have the underlining on the tablet. but we generally try to say to avoid using that stuff on Reading Comp, right? We don't want to be in the world where we're marking up the entire passage. Now, we don't know if highlighting is going to be present on LSAT-Flex like it is on the tablet LSAT. I think, for Reading Comp, for me, I think the most important thing is keeping the organization of the passage in my mind and readily at hand. And so I think if you can kind of like jot down one word to summarize each paragraph on a piece of paper, that's great. I would imagine just like the tablet LSAT that if, they're giving you a line reference, it's not going to be a line reference anymore. They're just going to highlight the passage for you, which is great in terms of being able to find things quickly. And remember, when you're reading for Reading Comp, you're not reading to memorize. There's a reason that they gave line references and now highlight parts of the passage, right? They expect you to refer back sometimes. And then obviously with logic games, please guys, stay organized. I can't stress it enough. They know students rely on previous work and they reward those students. How are you going to rely on previous work if you're not neatly organized, right? And so what I mean by neatly organized is this idea of I would have my setup, my general setup in an area, and I wouldn't touch it. And then, right, I would probably do stuff like this where for the questions, let's say I need to draw out, well, generally we get the list question first, right? Which of the following is a complete and accurate list? Let's pretend it was C, right? The right answer. Don't forget that's a free hypothetical, right? So I would definitely want to draw that next to that, keep it nicely and neatly organized, move to question 2, right? And I think this is useful. This is more if they don't let you cross off answer choices or you find this helpful. But the reason I'm doing this is more if you need to draw hypotheticals, having them by the answer choices, knowing which ones are valid, keeping this organized. So as you progress, we can refer back. Can we use scratch paper? Yes, you can. You have 5 pieces of blank scratch paper. Here's a question that I'm assuming the answer is yes. You do need to create an account with ProctorU because that's who is administering the proctoring, and it's actually where you select your time slot. So for the May LSAT, when those time slot selections open, it was through ProctorU, which leads me to believe, yes, you do need to create a ProctorU account, and then that's where you're going to log in. Remember, for the June LSAT, that is coming up here on May 13th, I want to say. Yep. And if it's like the May LSAT was, that was at noon Eastern time. Obviously, we will send reminders out to you guys. You do want to be on the moment they open because you will have the opportunity to select the time and date. So imagine you're an afternoon person, you want to take it in the afternoon, be on early, afternoon is open. Vice versa, you're a morning person, you prefer to take it in the morning, be on early, hopefully that time slot is still available. So Emma, in terms of the timer, you know what? I'm actually going to see if I can find the answer to that question. Because it's a good question. And I would assume that they will let you, but let's see. It doesn't look like they talk about it. They also, they say you can't have digital timer, you can have analog timer, but it doesn't say. So here's the one I'm talking about. So you notice down here, you may wear an analog non-digital wristwatch. Watch may not have a dedicated start-stop functionality independent of telling time, but it may have an altered faceplate and a rotating diver's bezel, like ours, right? Ours rotates. I don't know if I have any around here because the digital LSAT basically made them obsolete, at least in North America. But again, I feel this is going to be in addition. I think that they're going to have a timer, right? I mean, why wouldn't they have a timer on the screen? I find that would be odd. But again, if Claire can find the answer to that, for sure, we're happy to say it definitively. So again, no pens, right? You need number 2 pencils, you see here on the screen. So in terms of what if you have special accommodations, can you still not read aloud? I mean, I would assume no, unless somehow your special accommodation is reading aloud, which I'm assuming that could work in a normal digital LSAT world. So possibly, but if it's not specifically reading aloud accommodation, I'm assuming the answer is going to be no. How do I feel LSAT-Flex will affect waitlist? Generally speaking, I don't think it's going to make an impact, right? Because waitlist means that the class is already full effectively, right? And so I don't think that they're going to be waiting for people's LSAT-Flex scores. I mean, possibly, the idea being that they're hoping that the scores are higher and then their class profile looks better, maybe. But, generally speaking, I think waitlist is more, they feel confident that they're going to fill their class. Now, remember, it's not just about making offers of admission, it's about matriculation. And I think, the one thing that's more likely to affect waitlist than the LSAT-Flex is going to be people withdrawing or deferring because they don't feel comfortable starting law school in the fall with the uncertainties surrounding coronavirus. Can white noise be used during the exam? I'm going to go with no. You live near heavy construction, I think in that world, my advice would be contact LSAC, right? Because while that's not an equipment issue, that is going to be, I don't have a quiet room. Although this is one-on-one basis, I don't know if that would qualify, but that's something I would definitely bring up to LSAC. And again, you can call them and email them. What happens to my score if internet fails during the exam? Okay, so if there's a technical mishap, it seems like the idea there is it's going to save your progress, right? So if you look here, just highlighting it so you guys can see where I'm looking. In most cases, the remote proctoring system will save your progress and pause the test while the technical issue is resolved, and then restart the test and allow you to resume where you left off. So that would be phenomenal, right? If you have a technical issue, it pauses, it's resolved, you come back right where you were left off. Now, obviously, there still can be some serious disruption depending on how long that process takes. You can imagine you're in the middle of a logic game, and then you lose your train of thought and having to, get back, very different from it happening, for example, on logical reasoning where, each stimulus stands alone. It's a lot easier. Whereas with a game, you have, 5 to 8 questions that follow each game. You could see that even if it, does pick up right where you left off, still being disruptive. Now, obviously, our hope is that, you won't experience any kind of, technical issues or internet malfunctions. But, again, something to notice that there is a process that will follow that, right? If it's, if your internet goes out and the webcam goes out before you're able to restart the exam, there's going to be the security check-in process again. And then, they're going to exercise discretion. The idea is, you can't intentionally, make your internet go out as a way to kind of, game the system. And so I think that's what they're referring to there. All right, moving on. How many hours do we suggest a person study per week? So definitely I would recommend to come out to next week's webinar on how to study for the LSAT. They'll obviously talk about that. We generally recommend, treating it as a part-time job, 2 to 4 hours a day. Again, preparing for the LSAT is extremely mentally draining, and there's an upper limit. So if you're preparing and you find that your brain is turning into mashed potatoes, you're not processing everything, get up, take a break, come back when you're refreshed, right? There's no reason to, stare at a page when nothing's processing. Now, if you don't have 2 to 4 hours a day because, you're working, you have other obligations, we just say that process will need to be spaced out over a longer period of time, right? And remember, it's all relative. It's all about where you start and where you want to go, right? Generally speaking, the larger that spread, the longer that process will take. Like, for example, me, I started in the 140s, I eventually scored a 174. My journey took me 7 months. If I was happy with a 150 score, 160 score, obviously that journey would have taken me less time. Here's a great question. If you were to buy them one test at a time, will you be able to see a breakdown as to what each question was correct and incorrect? So it depends on the exam. If you purchase the newer exams, yes. And I can actually show you what that looks like. So you actually see it on the free LSAT as well. But if I come here and I go to review, these questions have detailed explanations. And yes, 89 has these, 88 has them, 87 has them. We're in the process of uploading 86, 85, 84, 83, 82, 81. And so all of the 81s will have them. The course, our full course, in terms of as you go through the homework assignments. So for example, when I'm in main point, they also have these explanations that you can see here. And so yes, and that's included. We don't separate those out. So if you buy an exam and the questions happen to have explanations, it is available to you. And you will get the detailed score reports, right? Don't forget about the score reports that give you a breakdown of not only how you did, and obviously this is going to be a full exam, right? Exactly where I started with the 148. But you notice it breaks it down by section, and then it also breaks it down by question types. So this data is obviously extremely useful in a way to maximize your prep time. One of the things that LSATMax does as you progress is we track your progress, because this data can help you, right? If we know that you're struggling with, I'm obviously doing terrible here on everything. I think I should start using LSATMax a little bit more. But if you say that, hey, I'm struggling on strengthen questions, right? Not only can you drill down on a specific question type from here, right? Like, for example, if I just wanted to do strengthen with sufficient premise questions, I could do as many as I want from here, right? But I think obviously if you consider supplementing your prep with private tutoring, that data is invaluable, right? You don't want to show up to a private tutoring session without having something to work on, right? We recommend, using private tutoring when we know where your problem areas are and where that additional personal attention can really make an impact and get you over that hump. All right. How would you prepare for the July LSAT? So I would prepare as I would for any LSAT. I would get started immediately. If you haven't started studying, right, get started now. July is going to be here before you know it. And remember, an LSAT prep course is really only the first step of the process, right? We really want to make sure that you have ample time to practice under time pressure. For July, though, the one thing I would recommend doing is, preparing for both scenarios, digital LSAT on tablet, 5 sections versus 3-section at-home LSAT-Flex, right? And obviously LSATMax gives you the ability to do both of those, right? Our app, I haven't shown this yet, but if you wanted to see how the digital LSAT simulator looks in the app, you notice that it's very, very similar to the UI of the digital LSAT. And so you have this ability as well, but I would supplement it with some LSAT flexes because of the likelihood that July is canceled in terms of being in person and rescheduled as an LSAT flex. We will monitor that situation very closely and keep you updated as soon as we have any information regarding that. So again, I'm not sure I understand this question from Catherine. Do you believe this fall, with schools still accepting applications, would be less competitive due to the pandemic? So if we're talking about the application cycle that's going to open in the fall of 2020, right, for the class that starts in the fall of 2021, I think that cycle is going to be more competitive. As we talked about, you're going to see people who were planning to apply now put it off. You're going to see people from the recession turn their attention to graduate school because the job market isn't what it used to be. And then I think you're going to see people who were accepted to start this fall deferring their admission, and that will obviously take up seats as well. So in terms of how the recession affects scholarship money, it's hard to say. I think, obviously a school's resources are going to be directly related to that. Now, obviously, you do have federal loan programs. So it's hard to say. Now, obviously, great tie-in to our other free LSAT webinar next week about how to finance or financing law school, right, which we're going to talk about scholarships, obviously re-emphasize the importance of your LSAT score, not only the #1 factor in law school admissions, but also the #1 factor in terms of merit-based scholarships. And Claire just dropped that webinar registration link in the chat, so feel free to register for that and come out next week, and we will dive into that topic in great detail. So this is a question that we definitely should answer. There is no penalty for incorrect answer choices on the LSAT. So yes, if you're running out of time, you should guess and have an answer choice for every question, right? If you guess right, that point works just like if you got it right because you knew what you were doing, right? So definitely guess if you run out of time at the end. Grace, if you purchase just the practice exams, do you have access to those forever? Yeah, you'll have access to them as long as you're preparing for the LSAT. Now, obviously, we do have security in place that prevents account sharing, but for you yourself, as long as you're preparing, yes, absolutely, you will not lose access to that exam. And then obviously, as we roll out more and more explanations, those will update to include those as well. Here's an interesting question from Andre. Will we see the proctor suddenly appear while testing? I'm assuming no, right? They're not going to appear on your screen and distract you, right? Unless there's an issue where they're pausing your exam, right? Then maybe, but outside of that, no, I don't think, as I mentioned, I would anticipate they're going to mute their side. And again, there's no way a live person is watching your entire exam. They're relying on artificial intelligence in terms of recording it, scanning for faces, right? If anybody enters the room, paying attention for weird noises, right? That will then flag the video, and then somebody will go back and review it. Does it still make sense to use a traditional study plan? Absolutely. Again, the only difference is the format of the exam. So the only change that you're making is doing LSAT-Flex exams as your simulated practice exams. Other than that, it's the exact same substantive exam. Obviously, logical reasoning being weighted less, you're not as heavily invested in that section, right? But again, you definitely want to do well on and as many of them as possible. So here's a question from Duran. How many hours do you recommend a person should achieve to be successful for the exam? Every student is different. Again, going back to what I said, and again, we'll talk about this next week in how to study for the LSAT. When somebody asks me, what's a good LSAT score? My response is always, where do you want to go to law school, right? That is how you should determine your target score, right? For me, I wanted to go to Harvard Law School, right? So what does that mean? Let's take a look at Harvard Law 509 disclosure. And so any school, okay, if you want to go to UCLA Law, right, you want to go here to Google and you want to Google 509 disclosure, and you see it comes up here. And so why do I care about this? What this is the class profile, right? It gives you a breakdown of what the admitted students of Harvard Law School's class of 2019, what it looked like, right? So what you want to focus in on is this over here. The 25-75 LSAT range. And that's going to give you your target score. So for me, my target score was between 170 and 175. Ideally, I could get above 175. Didn't happen. I got a 174. But I was within that range, and that gave me a good chance of getting admission. And so that's what you want to do in terms of determining your target score. Then you can take a simulated practice LSAT. Obviously, we have the free LSAT, both as an LSAT-Flex and as a traditional LSAT. I wouldn't recommend taking it as an LSAT-Flex unless you're taking it in May and June, right? Let's assume that it's going to be the regular LSAT until we hear otherwise. But that's going to give you your starting score. And then based on that spread, I think you can get a sense of how long the process will take you, right? If it's 5-point spread, it's not going to take as long as it will if it's a 20, 30-point spread, right? So just something to keep in mind. So in terms of the size of the paper, they don't say anything in terms of the size of the paper. I would assume it's going to be standard size paper. You can't show up with a butcher paper, right? Like, here's my one sheet of scratch paper, first sheet, and like you have to like move it around for them to see it, I don't think that that's realistic. So I would assume yes, regular 8.5 by 11, blank 5 sheets of paper. So in terms of, this is a good question. Can you take untimed LSAT or LSAT-Flex on TestMax? Yes. We don't throw you out of the section because we realize that some students have different time accommodations. And we're working on an update that will allow you to change the time from 35 minutes to whatever your accommodation is. And I apologize that that's not live yet. But yes, you can take it without being thrown out of the section. Then obviously you're keeping time yourself, but when you're completed, you will get the same score report. Katrina, this is a great question, right? If you're at home, can there be decorations in the room? I don't think you need to redecorate your room for LSAT-Flex. Now, if you, for some reason, happen to have a chart of sufficient and necessary keyword indicators and their corresponding formulas, that is something you definitely want to take down before your LSAT-Flex. But, if you got a Tupac poster on your wall, I think you'll be okay leaving that up. Can you eat a snack between sections? And the answer is no. You can have a beverage, but no snacks. Now, again, remember, it's only 3 sections. In the real LSAT, you can't eat in the first 3 sections either, right? You have the break, which is after those first 3 sections. So yes, you should not anticipate being able to, bust out popcorn during your LSAT-Flex and chow down. Grace, great question. Will the LSAT-Flex, June LSAT-Flex be disclosed? I'm assuming no. I haven't heard anything about that. I think if anything is disclosed, it will probably be the international June exam, which is at this time still scheduled to take place at the end of the month. But I would assume for the LSAT-Flex in North America, it will not be disclosed. So Shumish is asking a question about down here. I'm not sure how they're able to do that, but they're obviously not including certain students in their LSAT calculation and in their undergraduate GPA calculation. How they're able to do that, what the standards and the rules are from that, I'm not sure. That's really an ABA thing with the law schools. But yeah, that means that some students are not included in this calculation. But the other thing I do want to emphasize here, because I hear Brandon sometimes say this, and I actually fundamentally disagree with him. He says that if you don't have a high GPA, you can't go to a top school, and I don't think that that's the case. I think it's definitely going to make it more challenging because top schools have the luxury of filling their classes with 99th percentile LSAT, 99th percentile GPA, right? But look here, when they say that the range is 25-75. What does that mean? That means 25% of Harvard's admitted students had lower than a 170. Okay, but we were talking about GPA with Brandon, right? But look, 25% of Harvard's admitted students have below a 3.79 GPA. And so you can definitely overcome lower LSAT score, lower GPA. You see it happening here in these numbers. How do you do that? Obviously, you need to be able to overcome these deficiencies with a stronger application in the other parts. So your personal statement, your letters of recommendation, being able to tell a story, right, that overcomes these deficiencies. And obviously, that's where admissions consulting can be incredibly helpful. If you missed Yelena's replay webinar on law school admissions, you can actually check that out here. In the office hours portal, you see law school applications with Yelena.
Okay, I see
this one. I would highly recommend watching this. And we also have another free one that I did, Law School Admissions Q&A. And both of these are free in the office hours portal. Great way to start thinking about the application process and how to navigate that. Okay, whoa, we just got a bunch more. Yes, the webinar is being recorded, Anthony. The replay will be shared as soon as it is live. It does take some time to process because these are generally longer sessions. And wow, we are almost coming up here on 2 o'clock, which means we're going to have to wrap this up. But yes, it will be available. So Audrey's question here, how do the logic flashcards from LSAC prepare me for the exam? I'm not sure. If it's anything related to this idea, we're just trying to get you comfortable with the keyword indicators, right? So like, what does unless do? Let me get through this tutorial. You want to know how to take the pure logic and extract it from the stimulus. And that's the idea of our sufficient and necessary condition flashcards, right? Where we go over the keyword indicators, if, unless, wherever, each, right? And this is the one part of the exam that is pure memorization. So you definitely want to spend the time to memorize these formulas. But I'm not familiar with their logic flashcards, so I'm not sure what they're doing there. So how, the question, if you've previously taken the writing sample, will you be exempt? All you need is one writing sample on your record. And so question for LSAC, but if you have a writing sample, you do not need to take it again. And then the last one here is just a thank you for taking the time. Of course, it is my pleasure. I am thrilled that you guys found this useful. We will continue to keep you guys updated. And again, I hope you see with what we did with the LSAT-Flex simulator, we will work night and day to ensure that you are put in a position to achieve your goals with LSATMax. If there's anything we can do, if there's any feature you want to see, you know, a lot of these features that we've been rolling out are a direct result of our students, right? Putting the explanations forward facing so you don't need to rely on the message boards. That was a request of our students, right? Having live sessions so that you can interact with our instructors and get clarification in addition to the on-demand materials, right? The idea of the office hours portal. Again, a direct response to a request from our students, right? So please, guys, do not hesitate to reach out to us. If there's anything we can do to help, I hope you guys found this webinar helpful. If you're taking the LSAT-Flex, please put yourself in a position to do your best. LSAC is giving you a remarkable opportunity by making this option available. So let's not let it go to waste. And until next time, stay safe, stay indoors, keep working on your LSAT prep.